Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Journeys to Belonging. My guest on today's podcast episode is Evo Hannan. I started following Evo on social media for several reasons, including his innovative mindset towards education and his passion for bringing educators together from around the world to connect with each other and have thought-provoking conversations that make a difference. I'm looking forward to another one of those thought-provoking sessions today. Evo, welcome.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you inviting me to your podcast, Eileen. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, especially now that we're finally connected. And I
Yeah.
can see you, of course, my audience can until I decide to put the videos up, but they're just listening right now. But it's just so nice to finally have connected. We've been trying to do this for quite a while. And we'll get into some of the things that you're doing, but you're just so busy. It's hard to catch you. So welcome. I didn't really say much about what you're doing, what you have been doing. So please share with our listeners about you.
Yeah, absolutely. But first of all, I mean, how long have we been connected for? Do you remember when we first connected on Twitter?
Oh gosh, it's at least 2 years, maybe more than that. I'm thinking it's more than that.
Yeah, was it through Bronwyn or was it before Bronwyn?
It was probably through Bronwyn
Mm,
and maybe even Barbara Bray.
Barbara Bray, yeah, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And just all the things that you were doing, I probably picked up from someone about one of the things that you were doing. I know student agency, I think that
Mm,
came through Barbara, and perhaps the other things came through Bronwyn. And of course, we weren't too far from each other when you were in
no,
Dubai and I was in Kuwait. So we were sort of
no.
located in the same general area. And that always interests me too.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a great, I mean, I know I've moved back to the UK recently, but I do definitely miss the Middle East.
Hmm. Well, hopefully you're getting back there soon. So
Yeah. Um,
yeah.
so,
So tell us about you.
so my name's Evo Hannan. I have been an educator for 20 years. I primarily graduated in product design in the year 2000. There weren't a lot of jobs around in design at the time, so I basically jumped straight into a postgraduate certificate of education in design and technology. I taught on the Wirral, which is where I was brought up in the northwest of England for 6 years. And then I took a big leap to teach abroad. And I managed to be fortunate to get a post in an international school in Dubai. I taught at the first international school, Dira International School, a great school in the festival city near the airport, for 9 years. That was the first time I also became a head of department, head of faculty. I
Nice.
had a bit of a taste of leadership then.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I started to discover this pattern of innovation in education, started to speak about it and be I was again very fortunate to be featured in a few publications and bits and pieces. And that led me to get my next post, which was at a GEMS International School in 2016, to lead innovation across the school and teach design, MYP and DP. And then a few years later, I was given an opportunity to lead the same thing in Dwight School Dubai, which I taught and led and did bits and pieces for 3 years before sadly leaving this summer, July 2021, to fly solo and try to step out of the classroom.
Something completely new.
Yeah, And yeah, I've returned back to the UK, and I have two children, Zach and Zara. Well, yeah, I've started my own, with my own experience in education, I started my own company to essentially help schools, teachers, leaders, education partners to embrace innovation, big thinking, change, and to connect.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how your path led you. The fact that you weren't able to find a job in the field that you originally thought you were going to find a job in, but you ended up finding a job in that. It just happens to be connected to education. I think it's so wonderful because a lot of times we have educators coming through the system and they happen to be natural innovators, or they sort of learn that design thinking or acquire that design thinking process along the way. But you were really immersed in it with your degree. So that's, I'm really excited to sort of see how that's woven into everything that you've been doing in more detail. So Evo, the first thing I always ask my guests is, if I say the word belonging or feeling a sense of belonging, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
The first thing that comes to mind is my family. Really, it's I think no matter what situation I'm in and where I am in my life, or in my mental state, they just bring me back. They just center me. My kids, my wife, I just get centered straight away. And all of a sudden it's like I'm back home again.
So it doesn't matter where you are.
No, it doesn't matter where I am. And funnily enough, even though I'm native from Merseyside, I've moved back to the southeast of England, to West Sussex, and I've never lived in West Sussex.
Oh, wow.
And I've never, not only have I never lived in West Sussex, I've never really visited the town that I currently live in. It's not even a town I've got experience of. But my kids are here, and that familiarity makes me feel like it's home, even though really it's about as unfamiliar as any other part of the country. Really, it's very different to Liverpool, my home city. So yeah, and I've settled very well, and they're a big part of that. 100%.
Yeah, I love that, because I think that it's so important for us to be able to have those relationships and that connection that grounds us and centers us and makes us feel like we're at home. And it's really true. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It matters who you're with and how you feel about those relationships of those people that you're with. So yeah, I really love that. I want to now get into all of the things that you've been doing. So your experience in the classroom and with your own two children has guided your need to find ways to develop education and make changes that matter, and also your background in innovation, meaning they positively affect teaching and learning, which means they affect teachers and learners. How did that get started? I would love to hear about that beginning part of your journey. How did that start coming together?
So I've never really been a teacher that plays by the book.
Okay. That's probably another reason why we connected, Evo.
Because I just as a youngster, being creative is always where I belonged, where I felt comfortable. But as I was growing up, you were essentially told that if you're academic, you'll be successful in life. And if you're anybody else, you kind of go to another part of the world where nobody really focuses on, but you'll kind of mosey on through and you'll be okay. But in my mind, I always had this understanding that surely creating your own knowledge, your own ideas is more important than being able to regurgitate somebody else's. But it just, I couldn't translate that. I couldn't translate that to somebody. So when the KHDA, the Dubai Education Authority, put a really big emphasis on innovation and education around 2013, 14, all of a sudden I was like, yes, here we go. Now, for the first time, somebody has recognized that being forward thinking and learning to solve problems and creating new ideas has an importance in society. And from there, it just, I think that's where, before we started the podcast, we were having a quick chat. That's where I can confidently say my experience in Dubai has literally changed my life, because without that, I think I would still have this opinion that, yeah, I think this of creativity and innovation, but nobody else does, so I need to keep my mouth shut. But I kind of didn't have to do that in Dubai. And then I was in a city where everything was big thinking.
It's true. Everything is just big.
Everything's big, exactly. And so whether they promoted it as heavily as they did or if they didn't, the word innovation is almost on every single billboard in Dubai. Like, it is everywhere. But it's everywhere by purpose. Not because they're trying to market something that is a fad. You know, there's a nation, the UAE is a nation that has moved forward drastically in the last 25 years. Dubai as a city wasn't even, I don't even think people knew where it was 15 years ago. You know, 15 years ago. Or
where it was. Yeah, you're right.
You know, 15 years ago. Now, some of the biggest people, some of the most famous people in the world go on holiday in Dubai. You know, I mean, talk about a shift in the way that people think. I mean, that is a radical change in an already established world. You know, the leisure and tourism world is already established. People visit Europe, people visit the UK, people visit New York, people visit San Francisco, California, Sydney, Australia. Dubai was never anywhere, the Middle East was never anywhere on anybody's radar to visit. Now, some people go there 2-3 times a year. So could I soak that in? Could I soak that philosophy in as a person? And that's kind of what I did. And I've come out the other side, really blowing a loud whistle.
Yes.
Basically.
I love it. Yeah. That's just so important that you weren't a passive observer of all of that happening, that it aligned with your thinking, but not only just aligned with your thinking, but supported your thinking. And so you were able to do things that perhaps, and were encouraged to do things that perhaps you wouldn't have been if you had been in a different environment, which is really, really interesting. So I want to ask you about some of the different projects that you got into, that you created, actually. So one of the ideas you had was the agency project. I'd love for you to tell our listeners what agency means to you, because I think it's a highly misunderstood word. It's it's sort of one of those education buzzwords. So I'd love to know from your point of view, since it's something really important to you, what agency means to you and why is it important? And then to tell our, in relation to that, what is the agency project?
So the first time I heard about the term student agency was It was when I was in New York in 2019,
Mm-hmm.
and I just heard people mention agency. Or are you doing this? Are you promoting it? And I didn't really know what it meant. I was like, this sounds cool, but I don't know what people are talking about. And so I stayed within the loop of
Mm-hmm.
conversations when I returned back to Dubai, and I stayed in touch with the PLN, the crazy PLN,
Right.
and a bunch of the guys in America that I managed to meet on my trip. And it similar to what I think you'd mentioned before, I started to slowly realize
Mm-hmm.
that agency was something I was promoting, but I just wasn't calling it agency.
Okay.
So allowing students to process a project or a question based on their own desires, based on
Mm-hmm.
their own roadmap.
Right.
That was something, as a design technology teacher,
Mm-hmm.
that's what you do. You set a brief and the kids, they come up with their own project. We just didn't
Right.
call it agency. We just called it a project. We said,
Right.
this is your choice. This is a choice. You get to choose.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So as soon as I understood it had a fancy name, and I just thought, this is cool.
Yeah.
This is
Yes.
something that
Yes.
I kind
Now I
of,
have something to call it. Yes.
yeah, I've got something to call it. And then I started to dig a bit deeper into
Mm-hmm.
how were teachers using agency to benefit students. And I think what I found was many teachers felt that by giving too much movement within agency
Mm-hmm.
would take away their ability to teach, or would take
Mm.
away their ability to assess, because
Right.
it doesn't fit within a fixed rubric or whatever. Now, as you know, as an IB teacher, which is what I've
Mm-hmm.
been for the past 14 years,
Right.
student agencies part and parcel of what they
Yes.
promote.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to dig a bit deeper, and I thought,
Mm-hmm.
again, from a practical sense, as a design person first, I was like, how do I create something
Mm-hmm.
that helps teachers maybe
Right.
pick up agency easier without
Mm-hmm.
necessarily feeling like it's threatening or ambiguous to them, because it was
Okay.
ambiguous to me when I first
Mm.
started. So I created
Mm-hmm.
this project. I launched it on the 6th of November on Twitter through a series of 1 minute. These are like black and white 1 minute videos.
Uh-huh.
I got a team together to support the idea, who were all big on agency, which included
Mm-hmm.
Barbara Bray,
Right.
Vernon Wright, Chris Quinn, and we launched this idea called Agents for Agency, and it ran under an acronym, the AGENT acronym, which A stood for teachers who are active in their
Mm-hmm.
development. G stood for teachers who openly are willing to learn about Generation Z students and their
Nice.
needs. E stood for every child, which is, I think, part and
Mm-hmm.
parcel of learning anyway.
Sure.
N stood for new and innovative ideas. Don't be afraid
Mm-hmm.
to bring new and innovative ideas to the table, and allowing students to also do that.
Right.
And then the T, which is the cornerstone of being an agent for agency, is trust. So you
Yeah.
can't really promote agency if you don't develop trusting, meaningful relationships with
Mm-hmm.
your agents,
Of
because
course. Mm-hmm.
with that trust comes the element of the teacher feeling more
Mm-hmm.
secure in where the students are going with their journeys.
Right.
So I had to pause it because of COVID. Unfortunately, there was a big, I don't know.
Yes, I know
Yeah,
you had actually speaking gigs
yeah. Well, we had
scheduled and
workshops. Yeah, it was
yes.
workshops. We had one in
Oh,
Manhattan,
wow.
one in Houston, one in San Francisco with Barbara
Mm-hmm.
Bray. and then one with was organized around Shay and Pav in near Toronto, in the Toronto area.
Oh,
So
wow.
and then we had to pause it because of COVID. They with the pandemic, they obviously
Yes.
stopped flights, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of been sat there. And with the new company Innovation X, it gives me opportunities to launch,
Mm-hmm.
and in this case, relaunch an idea
Right.
with intent. So
Yes.
keep your eyes peeled, because at some point there will be a new kind of revolution of agents
Mm-hmm.
for agency coming up.
Oh, I'm excited. Yes, because I had signed up for that and I was so disappointed that we had to put it on hold, but we were disappointed about a lot of things. So I'm glad to hear that you've just put it on the back burner and it's on low heat right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another innovation that you started was Ed Talks Live,
Yeah.
which I participated in and I attended quite a few times. What was it? Has it continued? What were its goals? And did it motivate you or help you on your journey to becoming an entrepreneur?
So funnily enough, Ed Talks Live was born from me having to not go to the States for the agency sessions,
Oh,
because
okay.
of, so I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but it was in response to me not being able to go to the States. I produced something that was online, which became Ed Talks Live. And so
Gotcha.
the very first Ed Talks Live, which was promoting educational conversations very similar to what we were going to be doing with the agency sessions,
Mm-hmm.
was on the same date as the first agency session in Manhattan. So
Oh,
the first,
right. I do
yeah,
remember that now.
so the
Yes.
first agency session was meant to be
Mm-hmm.
the 28th of March 2020. So I stuck to that date, and that was the very first Ed Talks Live.
Okay.
Um, so what started as really
Mm-hmm.
um, a response to a situation that I had no control over, essentially turned it into its own show. And the second season, so the first season was almost one-to-one
Mm-hmm.
with educators in some regard. The second season, I introduced this staff room where there was a group of teachers behind the
Right.
scenes who were adding opinions, and we had a quiz and had a bit of that fun element to things, which I always like.
Yes. Everybody needed
Um,
that last year, that's for sure.
and then once the house is renovated, which will be hopefully in the next 6 months, I'm hoping that I can have the third season. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah. Um,
Good.
yeah.
I'm excited. I was worried that with this transition it might stop, but it sounds like it fits into everything you're doing. So your sort of your journey started and it's still continuing. All of those pieces will eventually have places
Mm,
in the bigger picture. Um,
yeah.
I want to also just, we of course the show is about belonging, but it's about so much more than that, because I love highlighting the people who are on it, my guests, and all the wonderful things that they're doing so that everybody knows about it. But a big part, and we were talking briefly before I started recording, a big part of what you do that I admire so much, and it comes to you, it seems to me easily, but you can tell me if I'm wrong, is the whole idea of networking and being able to create these networks, PLNs, people who connect to each other. You've connected me to people that I was never connected with before, including Naomi Toland and others. So if you're looking at networking, how important is that to you? I think I know the answer, but how important that is to you? And have you always been doing it? Does it come easy to you? And what part does it play in your life?
So I'm very fortunate as
Mhm.
a person because I like people.
So
I
that's a good
like
thing.
I genuinely like people.
Mhm.
I thought this was something that was natural, but apparently my friends told me that it wasn't. Um, I like connecting with people. I like
Right.
listening to people,
Mhm.
understanding, learning. Um, the importance of networking, I I didn't fully understand until um, mental health awareness became on people's radar. So
Interesting.
when people started to talk about mental health awareness,
Mhm.
um, sometimes people feeling lack of direction,
Mhm.
lack of focus, lost.
Right.
I can kind of compare that to the situations I put myself in,
Mhm.
and wondered why I didn't necessarily suffer as much. And I think it's because I'm almost constantly surrounded by people. I'm
Mhm.
almost constantly surrounded and connected with people.
Right.
And as a result, I kind of surf like through life
Mhm.
with others, and my journey I never feel alone. Um,
I love it.
and a lot of that is to do with the connections I have and the PLN
Mhm.
and the connections I've grown
Right.
continue to inspire me to move forward and continue to inspire my journey. I mean, you've mentioned Naomi Toland, for example,
Mhm.
who, if I look back, I've probably only known, I say only, known Naomi for maybe 15 months,
Yeah.
um, maybe 16 months.
Mhm.
Yet I'd definitely consider her one of my friends, one of my good friends.
Right.
We've never met in person.
I know.
We
I love that part of it. Yes.
Yeah, we but pretty. I mean, we're literally on opposite sides of the world right now.
Mhm.
She's in New Zealand. I'm in the UK,
Right.
but we stay in touch. We're very regularly in touch with each other. We Zoom, we chat ideas, we support each other,
Right.
and that's one example, Eileen,
Mhm.
of many people um,
Right.
who I'm very fortunate to have in my life, who
Yeah.
let me kind of have a rant with them every now and then, and put up with my irritations
Oh,
and yeah,
none of us
it's
is perfect.
yeah. Um, so 100% it has helped me to where I am today.
Mhm.
Um, yes, I felt nervous stepping out of the classroom, but if I didn't have a support network, if I didn't have people around me saying,
Mhm.
you know, pushing me on to say, "You got this, Evo. Yep, let's have a look at this. Let's have a closer look at this." I
Right.
actually did a soft launch of Vertigo in Dubai before I left Dubai. So before, it was maybe 2 months, 2 or 3 months before I'd even launched the
Nice.
project. I had a
Uh-huh.
soft launch in Dubai with 12 of my best friends in C'est La Vie, which is this great bar that looks over the Burj Khalifa. Um, and they were like, "Yeah, let's have a look at this." And so without that support network and
Mhm.
without it being mutual, the relationships are very mutual, and that's another thing.
Right.
I'm somebody who believes that relationships thrive when both people contribute
Mhm.
um, to them.
Right.
So I'm always going to be someone who is free at the other end of a line, whether
Mhm.
it's for you, Eileen, or whether it's for Bronwyn in Australia, or whether
Mhm.
it's for Barbara Bray in San Francisco. At any
Right.
point, I will be available because I want to be. I want
Mhm.
to make sure that just like I sometimes need to talk
Mhm.
to someone and I need a bit of guidance and support, I also want to be there for other people. I think it's important that we support the
Right.
fellow man. And that's one of the ways, hopefully, we can help the world, become a better place, and hopefully
Absolutely. Yeah.
achieve SDG goal 4, quality education for all.
And
And,
all of them, yes. Yeah, but
yeah, and all of them,
especially
a lot of them.
leading with that one. Yeah. I have had a few of my guests talk about the fact that belonging itself has two sides. And you've just mentioned it again. You mentioned it in terms of relationships, but we're talking about relationships and healthy relationships and that sense of belonging. That's exactly that. So you've not only found your sense of belonging with your family, which roots you and centers you, but you also have that professional belonging. And some of it is also sort of overlaps with personal belonging, I imagine, with your friendships. And all of that is just so important for not only grounding you, but giving you this sense that it isn't a one-way street. I just don't take, but I also give, and I willingly give because I know that contributes to the strength of those relationships. And so I love the way you've explained that, because it's how we all feel. It's how we'd all like to see our relationships, but they don't always turn out that way.
Mm.
But it is because you do the hard work, and your intention is to have that relationship work, because you are going to put in the hard work of being there for others, because others have been there. And it's not an exchange kind of thing where, I give you, you give me, but
No.
it's this idea that if you need me, I'm here to help. And I'm so grateful that you've been able to support me and help me and just take my ideas and make them even better. That's fantastic, especially in this world where people always feel they're in competition with each other. It's wonderful that you have the kind of trusting relationships, so you can say, nope, they're really contributing because they want to make me better, and because they know that I would do the same for them. And that's really the bottom line of the trust. So I'm really excited to hear more about Vertigo. So I know that some of it's not ready to be announced or whatever, but so tell us a little bit more about Vertigo and whatever you can share right now, so that our listeners can look out for it in the hopefully near future.
So the company, the company I've set up is a big thinking company called Innovation X, which essentially is has been created it's been created to support the education community.
Okay.
And from Innovation X will come small services, and those small services will be there to support schools and education partners and teachers. And then long term, people can contribute towards those services as well with their own expertise and so on, which is the cool thing. Again, developing relationships. Vertigo is the first service, and it is a social media agency for schools and education partners. It primarily helps schools and education partners increase their engagement on social media, but also helps them to streamline in various innovative ways to help systems become more effective, communication systems more effective, marketing, sharing stories. Right. So it will inevitably, or eventually, should I say, alleviate some of the pressures that some members in schools, leaders, teachers may feel by streamlining it into a almost singular social media storytelling process.
Nice. Oh, I've got so many things going through my mind, because that's exactly what I'm looking for. So hopefully you're willing to also to take on other edupreneurs because you hit Yeah, because you hit upon something really important. If you want to do social media marketing and get your message out efficiently and well, you really need to spend time at it.
Mm.
And not everybody has the creative talent for it. I mean,
Mm.
that the kind of mind, not that they're not creative, but they don't sort of have that ability to be able to pick up on what that sort of user experience, that UX.
Yeah, the
Yes.
UX. You've really
And
nailed
also,
it there.
yes, and
Nailed it.
also because educators have such limited time.
Mm.
And we're not just talking, you're not talking about individual educators necessarily. You're talking about school systems. You're talking about, global, trying to get the message out globally. And really, if we want to accomplish SDG 4 and the others by 2030, we really need to get these messages out. People need to understand, and we need to be speaking the same language. So not to take your message away, but I love the idea, and I'm counting on you to be successful. No pressure, Evo.
Well, maybe you
Because
can help me.
yeah,
Maybe you
sure.
can contribute. Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. I'm always happy to. I've certainly learned a lot about, just from lurking and just watching others who are very good at it, and reading and things like that. But anyway, so I'm really excited about getting started, but that's only sort of the first edge of where you're headed. And there are so many other initiatives that I'm sure will pop up along the way. So Evo, I hate to stop, because this has been just so wonderful finally connecting with you. Is there anything else you wanted to tell our listeners or talk about before we finish up?
Just if you're listening to this and you ever feel that you want to talk over an idea, or you have a crazy idea, and you don't have anyone to share it with, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to discuss and have a chat about pretty much anything in education. Here to support people, and it's going to be a fairly tough term ahead of us, but good luck to everyone, and yeah, I wish you all the best. You're all doing a great job, guys. All doing a great job.
Yes, that's terrific. And you talked a little bit about staff room, the idea of staff room, and I know you have staff room Sunday, but what are other ways for people to be in contact with you? How can people find you? What are the best places to look for you?
Okay, so I'm a big Twitter user, so you can find me on Twitter at Evo Hannan, EVOHANNAN. You can jump into the Global Staff Room. Everyone's invited. Hashtag Global Staff Room Sunday. That always kicks off on a Sunday, and it kind of almost goes through the week. Funnily
It
enough.
does. Yeah.
There's also something I started on Monday called Monday Motivators, which is to help kickstart people's week with positivity and connections. Again, feel free to jump into that and mention some people who motivate you. You've featured on that list a few times, no doubt, Eileen.
I have.
For me, because you do keep me motivated and focused. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
You can possibly visit my website, evohannan.com. There's a few bits on there. If you want to know more about Vertigo, you can go onto the Instagram page, vertigo.socialmedia. I'm very much looking forward to working with schools and education partners on that. So feel free to reach out if you want to find out more about how you can use social media more effectively to communicate within your school network. Ed Talks Live is on YouTube, right? So if you type in Ed Talks Live or Evo Hannan, there's a bunch of YouTube shows that are, some of them are quite humorous. There's bits and pieces kind of all over the place, right?
Right. But that's probably one of the reasons why you wanted to put Innovation X together, because as a design person, I think you know that it needs to be connected.
Yes.
So you'll get there, I'm sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And I'm excited to to watch your journey because there's so many things that hopefully will be happening over the next year or so as you settle into your new life and get the company going. So, and hopefully the remodeling done in the house. Evo, this was just wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show. I know how busy you are making the transition and with the kids and everything like that. So thank you for joining me today.
No, absolutely, Eileen. It's been a pleasure. I'm so glad we finally managed to catch up.
Mhm.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I've really enjoyed it.